top of South Summit. My left eye went blind. My oxygen mask went for a toss. The oxygen got blocked because of. So I was without supplemental oxygen for half an hour in Mexico. So one big boulder fell down silently, and it dropped on the snow, and it was like bouncing and coming, and it hit my partner, my climbing partner, and myself. First it hit him, then it hit me, and we both like almost fell off from the slope, and instantly he broke his hip bone from that first thrust, and I also got hit, and I was very scared because I had just left one last mountain to complete my world record that time, to that was Antarctica's mountain, and I thought my it was only 1 month left, and I thought especially I lost three of my friends on Mount Everest that time in the same day when we were summiting. So they were not in our team, but they were from Bengal and they were in another team. That created, like, when we came down from the summit.
So, hello and welcome to another episode of the podcast. And today, it's a very special podcast for me, and I will tell you why. Imagine a person who has literally grasped for breath in his younger years. Imagine how difficult it would be. And then one fine day, he finds himself on the top of the world. And it's not only Mount Everest I'm talking about, it's the seven summits, it's the seven volcano summits. He has been to South Pole, he has been to North Pole, you name it, and he has done it. So I am very glad to have Mr. Satyarup on our podcast today, and he has just been on the top of Mount Brahma as well, sir. So congratulations for that, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
How are you feeling, sir, right now? You have been just through, one of the ascents, and as you were telling me, you still have those warrior scars of that burn. So how are you feeling right now? How has been the ascent?
It is definitely a proud moment for all of us who has been to this expedition, because for the last 43 years there was no summit for this mountain, and there were no Indian summit out of the four summit that has happened in the history of this mountain. There were no Indian summits. So when we actually found a new route and submitted this one, this was definitely a very special moment for being an Indian.
I was just following through your stories, and this is something that I come from a hilly state. I'm from Uttarakhand, so I always see these mountaineers coming there, especially towards that Khatigaon base, Pindari Glacier trek. Yes. That. So I always see that somehow the people who are not from our country, from the west especially, they make these ascents. So, do we do these treks after they do it, or how is it? I mean, like 40 years, no Indian has been there.
So mountaineering as an adventure sport, it came pretty late in India. So it all started with George Mallory coming and trying for mountaineering, like to climb Mount Everest, and they came via India, and Darjeeling was one of those areas, and the normal people were not climbing that time. There were more the Sherpa community people they were hiring. So after getting inspired by all those things, and the climbing in mountains was only limited to saints and sages who used to go to mountains for peace, but not with the advanced equipments and stuffs and all. But in the Alps, long back, it started as a mountaineering as an adventure sport. Well, from 1700 end, from that time onwards. So obviously they have an advantage, starting advantage, but also mountaineering is a costly sport, and we didn't had much access to those except the army people, and so there were some challenges, but of late I think there are many mountaineers from India who are making a mark, as well as the starting as a ground level, from trekking to mountaineering. Things have started to build up from the last 10-15 years. I think that is a good sign, and India has a huge potential for being an adventure sport destination, just like New Zealand or Nepal as such.
I agree with you, because whenever I get time, I go for solo travels, especially in Himachal and in Uttarakhand. And the place I was just mentioning, the Pindari Glacier Base Camp, Khatigaon. So I didn't make the trek itself. I just went for the base Khatigaon, and it was during New Year. So at that particular time, I felt why across cultures do they worship sun? Because if sunlight is not there,
Right.
we couldn't even imagine getting out of the house, sir. I mean, I am from that side. I am from hills itself, but still, I just got a taste of how difficult it would be to, just be at those extreme places. Now, coming about your journey, sir, as I described earlier, you had faced difficulties, especially regarding your physical health, where you had attacks of asthma during your younger years. So, how does one goes through that journey of just first taking those baby steps and then just be on the top of the world?
Right. I think when I reflect back at this journey, it feels totally like a utopian journey for me. But if I have to go much finer details, I think as a kid I was never bullied for being asthmatic. I was never bullied, so it never created a scar as such. And then what happened was, when I couldn't play, when I was actually diagnosed with asthma when I was in class 2. And as a kid we used to play football, not like the strategic football, but one ball is going and everybody is trying to hit that ball, so slowly I felt that breathlessness, and eventually I became a backy and a goalkeeper, and one fine day out of the ground. But when I was out of the ground, we found some other playgrounds, and that were like climbing trees and walking on the parapets, walking on the boundary walls and all. Uh, so though something was deprived, it was balanced with something else. I didn't feel anything that I was deprived in a childhood or something like that. Now, of course, when I was growing up, then it was hitting on the confidence, it was hitting on the self-esteem, it was giving a feeling that a kind of uh, getting dependent on inhalers, trying to, and that time, though nobody used to bully me, but still there was a kind of subconscious things, so whenever I used to take it, yeah, run back and so that nobody could see and take that and all, right, uh, and to one extent I accepted that kind of life. But then when I was in college in 2001, I was in Sikkim in Manipal's engineering college there, and the frequency of attacks used to be more because of the climatic conditions and the geographical conditions. Uh, One fine day I was going out of the college campus, and suddenly I had this attack. And for the first time, I found in myself in a situation where I have an attack, and I'm not carrying the inhaler with me. And that next 10 minutes was the turning point of my life, I think, because that next 10 minutes showed me how life could be. It was a very devastating moments. I was thinking that I am dying, and but at the same time, that 10 minutes ordeal actually showed me that I didn't die without the inhaler. So that gave me a kind of ray of hope that probably I can take this bold decision of not becoming a chained or slave to the inhaler, and let me try reconditioning my body. And I decided that time, out of probably that time, it was I was 18 years and blood was boiling, and I was feeling very bad about myself, and it's a kind of pity feeling. Then I decided, out of a spur of a moment, that I'm not going to carry my inhaler in my pocket anymore. And I also decided to eat all the foods that I was allergic to, because I had a list of foods that I was allergic to. And now, though I had promised myself, but while implementing that, the body was used to that kind of inhalers and all, right. So that conditioning was already there. So now when I was denying body the inhaler, the reactions were more vigorous, and it was craving for more, craving for more, and the attacks were more vigorous. But then I was very adamant, and I was okay for facing anything. To that extent, I was frustrated with those inhalers. And the next 4 years saw me going through this kind of routine where I used to try not to take the inhaler, not to carry the inhaler, of course, but try to delay the usage of inhaler. So every time I had an attack, I had to go back to my hostel to get that puff. So and, if given a choice now, probably at this age, I will never try to do that kind of thing. But that time, I am glad that that happened. But yeah, it went on till 7 years, and to an extent where I could eat anything without much problem. And even though I run now, I feel heaviness. I don't enjoy running, but still I can run 10-15 kilometers. I can climb mountains. What else do I need? And I don't need for more than uh, 15 years now. Yeah, 15-16 years. Yeah.
Seeing this podcast, I would really like to tell them that, what sir is describing right now, it's a feat of the mind, I think, first, and of the body later. The way that one can think that, yes, I can make that journey of transiting, just not be dependent on the inhalers and stuff. It's really phenomenal, sir. Now I will take you a bit ahead in your emotional journey. So right now, so you were there, you were not able to catch breath and all that, and then you are suddenly on the top of the world. You're on top of the Everest, the Mount Everest. I mean, we have been hearing for it for I don't know how long. So describe for me, sir, the time that you started the journey for that ascent. That particular, how did it feel emotionally? And
So it didn't happen in a one day. So first of all, I was never exposed to trekking at all. So in 2008, for the first time when I fought my fear, because though I was not using the inhaler at that time, still the fear was there. What if it comes? And I can never do certain things. That was in my mind. I can never go to a mountain. So when that opportunity came in front of me, that to go for a trek in Tamil Nadu, I was in a dilemma that one side of me wanted me to go there because it was very adventurous to go, and it was only read in the books. The other side, it was telling me, the logical side, that if I go, I'll die a dog's death. So how can an asthmatic guy go to a mountain? Even if you see any of these trekking companies and all, they will ask you, do you have a background of asthma? It means it is a kind of omitting,
share
I,
something with you, sir. Can
huh?
I share something with you? Can I share
Yes,
something with you here? So
yes, yes.
as I was telling you that, I was also asthmatic as a kid, and my dad was in the Indian Air Force, and then he retired, and then we retreated to the mountains, my native place. And I don't know why this has happened, but after that I never got an attack. So
Nice.
I don't have any scientific reason, no reason for that. It's not advisable medically, whatever it may be, for the disclaimer. But this mountains and this asthma and this breathing have some strange correlations. Sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt you. Just wanted
I
to.
do agree with you, because I know 3 or 4 people in my close circle who had asthmatic background, and who still use inhalers and still go to mountains. So it is not a deterrent for doing what you want to do. But then when I actually went to that particular hill in Tamil Nadu, I carried a new set of inhalers, thinking that what if it happens, then I will take that. And the whole journey was so tough. And when I reached the top, I suddenly realized, when I was cherishing my first summit, at the top of that hill, that time I realized that I didn't have to take an inhaler, not even once. So that cemented that belief that, yeah, at least asthma will not come between me and my mountains. And I fell in love with this kind of adventurous life, and I started going for trekking in the Western Ghats from 2008 2010. Then I went for Everest Base Camp in 2010 December, and I saw Everest in front of me and fell in love with Everest without knowing the facts and figures. Because had I knew the facts and figures, probably I wouldn't have allowed myself to dream that big. But then I'm glad that I didn't know much about Everest that time, and I promised myself that I'm going to come back, only to later read books and literatures, and realize that it is something like, a big thing, like, big from financial thing, big from preparation, big from experience. So I went for mountaineering course in 2011, in December, at Himalayan Mountaineering Institute, Darjeeling. There also, like, again, I carried my inhaler, I carried my fear with me, because what if in the high altitude I don't know how it is going to happen and all. And then finished the mountaineering course, and then I realized that it's not that I do a mountaineering course and I go to Everest. It has to be a journey, like, you have to train your body, mind. And then I came across the concept of seven summits when I was searching for Kilimanjaro, and I was fascinated by that. But again, like, it was an impossible dream given the amount of money and all. I didn't have money for climbing one mountain, and here I was talking about seven mountains. But then again, like, I allowed myself to see what if I get some opportunity. Let me keep myself prepared, like, so when preparation meets opportunity, then, like, things happens, right? Yeah. And then I the journey started, keeping, obviously, the main thought process was Everest and doing all the things as a stepping stone. And when 2015 I was going for Everest, again I was carrying my inhaler, because I was not sure what will happen at 8,000 meter plus. That time when I was near base camp, there was this earthquake, and our expedition got cancelled, and all the money was lost, and we came back defeated. uh, so 2016, again I tried for Everest, and this time I didn't take my inhaler with me. So first time I was, like, facing my fear eye to eye, like, and then finally 2016, on 21st May, I summited Mount Everest, and that too, when I was on the summit ridge, at the top of South Summit, my left eye went blind. My oxygen mask went for a toss. The oxygen got blocked because of. So I was without supplemental oxygen for half an hour, and so. But then I realized that all this asthma uh, backdrop, like, So when I was looking back, that how could I not panic during that time, like, how could I still stay calm and negotiate with my Sherpa to get an get the mask for 10-15 minutes, so that I can go to the summit and come back, and then whatever happens I'll happen, like, so then I was little that was not me, like, that anybody would have got scared. So I was not comfortable with the very thought that why I was not scared, because that was natural, right? But then I realized that what happened that time at the top was nothing new that was happening for me. All my childhood days till my college days, I had that situation of breathlessness without oxygen. So my brain didn't perceive something new was happening, so it didn't panic. So actually, the same asthma which I was cursing my whole life actually came to my savior there that day, and that kept me sane, and could negotiate and do the summit and come back alive. So yeah, I mean, like, so I don't have any resentment, or neither I have any thing that if I have to go back in time, would I like to have myself without an asthma? Probably no, because everything that had happened in the past, all the success, all the failure, the total outcome is today what I am, and I'm happy with what I am. So yeah, so that was my Everest journey in a nutshell. But yeah.
Wow, so it's not even a journey, it's a saga, if I can use the word. I mean, to get loose of your oxygen again at the top. I mean, it's in psychology, in mythology, there are these stories, There's this hero's journey where hero goes ahead and faces his dragons, and then he finally slays his dragon. So you have literally slayed your dragon on the top of the world.
Yeah, the
And
dragon of the mind.
and one more important thing, sir, as we were discussing, I noticed is that you said a very critical point in the first part of the podcast, that you were not bullied in the childhood due to your asthma, right?
Yes.
And maybe that thing, coupled with that limitation that it became, since you were not bullied but it was a limitation, you could overcome it. You could
Yes.
overcome it and make that journey. I would really like to ask you that, what does fear means to you? I was always wondering, I wanted to ask you this, what does fear means to you and how do you view it?
So I get scared, and I think it is very important to get scared, because that helps me to get up in the early morning and go for that run, even though I don't like running. Still, that pushes me to go for that run because I don't want to die on the mountains, right? So that fear, you have a choice whether you want to use it as a brake or do you want to use that as an accelerator. So I use it in a more in a constructive way. And yeah, I think if I was fearless, probably I would have not prepared well. So overconfidence might have come, so I appreciate fear, but I realize also one thing, that what is the worst thing can happen, right? uh, so when I'm fearing something, so I try to see fast forward and see that if my worst fear comes true, what is going to happen and what is the outcome, and I try to see that what can I do to change that outcome, right? So from dying, let it let it be like be in a bed. From being a bed, let it be just broken bones. From being broken bones to this. So this way, it helps me to identify that what are the risks. See, if I can become an ostrich and say that no, everything is fine, all is well, but then it is not right. Let me understand all the risk and then try to mitigate all these risks. So risk exists, but it is about how you have to know yourself, that how much is your capacity, and see that how what can you do to overcome those risks, to how to mitigate those risks and how to. So it's not about taking a reckless risk, but it is about taking a calculated risk. So we all do that.
It's very beautiful. I mean, the way you have described risk management in very simple words. It's basically risk management. You apprise your situation, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what can go wrong, what can go right, and then you just take a decision. It's not that just one fine day you wake up and you decide that I'm going to go climb Everest. No, you prepare for it, you do
Yes.
everything that has to be done for it, and then take the steps.
And I
So
have
one thing
turned
that you
mountains, near to the summit also. I went last year to Mount Indrasan. I turned back from 25 meters from the summit because I got stuck in one place, and then by the time I could come out of it, I was hanging for say almost 35-40 minutes. So I was already drained of energy, and my heartbeat was going up. So I didn't shy away from turning back, thinking that what will people think, because there are a lot of expectations, definitely, that when I go, people would want me to summit. But then I realized that this mountain will always be there. I can always come back again, and whatever I had to get from that mountain, I took. So taking that additional risk was unwarranted. And then I turned back. So I have turned back from 3-4 mountains like that. So you have to understand yourself first. That is your body supporting you, and then you come back and you learn from those mistakes, and then you prepare in a different way, or you try to make some amendments and all. So yeah.
every great journey maybe starts with self-awareness. There is no journey, there is no overcoming obstacles without knowing yourself. So
Yeah.
for someone like me, I would really like to ask you, what is this concept of 7 summits? What does it mean?
Yeah. So it's about climbing the highest mountains of all the 7 continents. So we have 7 continents like Asia, Europe, North America, South America, Africa, Antarctica, Australia. So all these mountains, all these continents might have mountains. When still I got to know about the concept, I had no clue that Antarctica might have mountains. Because Antarctica used to be so small there, and I was not even sure that Antarctica was so huge. In the globe you don't feel like, right, but Antarctica is huge. Right? Yeah. So even Antarctica has mountains, right? Now every continent might also have volcanoes, right? Now out of that volcanoes, what is the highest mountain and highest volcano of that continent? So in Asia, the highest mountain is Mount Everest. Also, it is also the highest mountain of the world also, but the highest mountain is Mount Everest. Similarly, there is a volcano. There are many volcanoes we know in Asia, right? Japan, all these Indonesia and all those places. But the highest volcano happens to be in Iran. And again, so as a kid, I was very bad in geography and history. Now history and geography has been an integral part in my mountaineering, because you have to understand that what was before, who has done that, and these and that and all. So Even I had an imagination that Iran is a full desert and hot and all those things and all. So this mountain in Iran, though it's a volcano and it's sulfur dioxide is coming constantly, but during the winters there it gets totally snow clad and people do skiing. So in Iran, suddenly that image of desert goes for a toss when you hear all those things when you go. And so these are something that I learned over the journey, like that. So a lot of myths got broken, a lot of things got broken. So like that, Asia's highest volcano is in Iran, and highest mountain is Mount Everest. Similarly, Australia as a continent, its highest mountain is Mount Kosciuszko, which is a very small hill. Actually, I would call hill because it just takes 2 hours to go and come, like to go to the summit. Even a 5-year-old guy can go there, like So there are stairs and all those things and all. Now there comes two list of mountains. One is Messner's seven summit list, which is Messner has proposed, and one is the original list, which is a Bass list. Like one guy called Bass, he had a list of things. So in his list, this mountain in Australia makes it like that because it's the highest mountain of Australia continent, the landmass. But then Messner had come and told that the plates, the geographic plates, the tectonic plates. So Australia hits Papua New Guinea, and Switzerland is a part of Oceania. So there, when you hit, so there the mountain is Mount Karstian's Pyramid, which is a very remote mountain. So he, in his list, he said that is the highest mountain. Now, what I did was I did all those mountains, like both the lists. Nobody can question. Even like in Europe, if you ask anyone what is the highest mountain in Europe, the local people would say that the highest mountain is Mont Blanc, that Mont Blanc. But actually, the highest mountain is in Russia, which is Mount Elbrus. But then people's sentiments are there and all. So I did the Mont Blanc as well because, so yeah, people used to think that Russia is USSR of a previous generation, so it is not a part of Europe and all. So similarly, West Papua, this Karstian's Pyramid, it is controlled by Indonesia. It is in West Papua. Now, if it is politically controlled by Indonesia, then it should be Asia actually, isn't it? So I went and climbed another mountain, which is the second highest mountain there, such that tomorrow, if this becomes a part of Asia, then at least I am done with the next thing. But then those are like excuses to explore more mountains. But yeah, finance becomes a little tricky part. I would not say a little tricky part. I think it is a big part. So last 5 years I had been chained because of the loans that I had taken for climbing mountains, and I was under the impression that once I do a world record, then somehow government or banks might come ahead and waive off my loans or something like that. So not even I got a tweet from any government or anything, but I don't resent it. But I'm trying to say that how difficult it becomes to arrange finance for this kind of mountain, especially if you are trying to make a mark in the international arena. Indian Himalayas is still much cheaper, but anything outside that, it's a huge thing. So I think there are more potential mountaineers in India, but it's just because that the finance is not getting secured, or it is not so popular adventure sport. Maybe India is not yet ready for adventure sport yet. We are still in the gamut of cricket and football and things like that. And, I think this whole journey became even more memorable because of all these struggles, and because this made me more resilient, and we could become mentally more tougher. So now no obstacle seems an obstacle now, not even financial obstacles.
I totally believe you, sir, when you say that, because when you describe of these struggles, they don't sound like struggle, but they are. If for I'm a bit aware about it, but if you're comfortable, how much does it cost to scale Mount Everest as of 2023?
This year, what I have understood is this year it costs 30 lakhs plus gears and equipments and all those things. Now imagine a person who is doing a job. It's a huge, a middle class family. It becomes a huge thing. Yeah. Antarctica costs 45 lakh to 50 lakhs. Skiing costs 35 lakhs. North Pole is getting cancelled for last 5 years. So I've been trying for the last 5 years. So there are cancellation costs, there are this cost, that cost. 45, 50 lakh is the cost of those. Like, so either you stop dreaming about um, going for getting an exposure for international things and all, or you live with it. So I chose the latter. So because I believe that mountaineering is should not be restricted just to Himalayas, because you need to, when you are exploring a mountain, you are not only exploring the mountain, you are exploring the flora and fauna, you are exploring the culture, the people, the interactions. It's a package altogether, right? So it widens your horizon a lot. You learn a lot and things like that. But yes, but I'm sure, things might change. But one good thing happened is, because of all these loans and all, I became an entrepreneur. Because I had to manage my leaves, I had to manage my things, manage the finance. Now, if I go for a mountain, then how will I pay the EMI? So that all made me, try to do something of my own and do more consulting, get more time for myself, this, that, and all. So yeah, so when you have when you are cornered, then only you try and take massive action. And I think that's what I did. But I feel little guilty when I try to motivate people to go for mountaineering, especially when I get approached by people asking that, how do we manage our finance, and who are not so fortunate enough, but still they. So I feel I get torn between, that should I um, give them the dream of climbing mountains, and then if I don't, then it becomes a totally difficult thing altogether. But then I realized that it's about mountain climbing. One is that physical mountain, and the other one is the mountains of the mind. So whatever you do, you are climbing mountains in some way. So when you are going for your life's first interview, you are climbing a mountain much more than a Mount Everest, right? So I encourage people to find their own mountains and try to conquer them. Need not to be just the physical mountains, so that's
I
that's how
think
it is.
this is the fundamental difference when I hear of the Western world where they make summits. So it's very organized in the sense they are sponsored by different organizations and individuals, and then that whole selection process is there. And there in India, when I hear stories, especially of individuals who are not part of any great organization, say the army, the navy, or something,
Right.
and they are carrying out the stuff on their own shoulders, so it's undescribable. I mean, the way you're describing it is very light, but I know how big
All
that
these things
amount is.
that makes it even more enjoyable journey. When you look back and see the struggle, then you feel more empowered. That way. And at the end, one should be happy. That's the more uh, fundamental part of it.
So obviously, sir. Now, one thing I would like to know is how different is climbing a normal summit to that of a volcanic summit. I have never spoke to someone who has done a volcanic summit. So
Right. So typically, it's almost the same, but the shape of a volcano is a typical conical mountain. And when it is typically, if a volcano had been burst before, so then the top part typically blows off, so then you don't get into the crater part of it. Crater means you don't get into the whole part of it, but you go to the top part of it, the rim. So in the glass, if you see the glass rim, now that rim is not a uniform rim, right? It is a kind of mountain. So there, the highest point you have to go. Now, these mountains typically it is always, it's like going up kind of things and all, and more rocky boulders. So a lot of boulders and things happens, and a lot of loose rocks happens in this kind of mountain, with or without snow, right? And then there are some, if they are active volcanoes, there are some volcanic activities, not necessarily that it has to be lava, but volcanic activities means there are some springs somewhere there, hot springs, there could be some little tremor. Now because of those tremor, this one the stones falls off, and that becomes very fatal. Like, when we were climbing a mountain, a volcano in Mexico, so one big boulder fell down silently, and it dropped on the snow, and it was like, bouncing and coming, and it hit my partner, my climbing partner, and myself. First it hit him, then it hit me, and we both like almost fell off from the slope, and instantly he broke his hip bone from that first thrust, and I also got hit, and I was very scared because I had just left one last mountain to complete my world record that time, like, to that was Antarctica's mountain, and I thought my it was only 1 month left, and I thought my leg is broken, and I couldn't even face that, like, to move my leg, that to see that my leg is broken, like, so, but fortunately it was just an injury and not a broken bone. But yeah, this kind of thing happens more frequently in volcanoes rather than in normal mountain. But normal mountain also, like, this mountain when we went, Mount Brahma, it was like, very uh, rotten mountain in terms of like the stones are very old, and a lot of erosion has happened, and also now imagine a small wind was triggering a lot of rockfall, so boulders were falling off and stuffs and all. So yes, rockfalls are there, but yeah, the reason for the rockfalls will be different in a volcano than here. So this kind of things. Yeah.
Uh, what would be your toughest experience yet out of all these things that you have done? What comes to your mind first? What has scared you maybe on the top? Something like that.
See, Mount Everest, no doubt, is the highest mountain in the world, and it has its own challenges. And especially, I lost three of my friends on Mount Everest that time in the same day when we were summiting. So they were not in our team, but they were from Bengal and they were in another team. That created, like, when we came down from the summit, we got to know about that incident. So we were not been told the incident while we were on the mountains, because otherwise it would have created some impact on us. So that way, there are some challenges. I saw a person falling in front of me. He fell down and died. Like, so those are a different challenge altogether. But if you're talking about uh, the toughness and stuffs and all, I always keep Mount Denali, which is the highest mountain in Alaska, as one of my tough expeditions. More because that time when I summited, it was in 2014, and I was not that experienced, and we climbed this mountain without any support, no Sherpa, no agency, because we didn't have much money to go for. We couldn't afford an agency. It costed almost 10 lakhs if you go through an agency. So we could do it at 1/10 of the cost. So there we had to do everything by ourselves. So that taught me a lot. But that was very demanding mountain as well. So I keep that mountain at a very high level for me. And if you ask me that what adventure I have done so far, I have done only one adventure in life. That is Mount Karshan's pyramid. And to go there, you have to go through a jungle, which is like, which was not walked by many people. And there were many tribals there, and there were instances of cannibalism as well. So, and we were guarded by 20 archers, like, while going to the base camp and stuff. So it was, every step was kind of uncertainty. So all of the mountains, we know, okay, there might be a route, there is this and stuffs and all. So but adventure, I keep Karshan's pyramid as very close to my heart, and something I will cherish for my life.
As you're saying it, it's an adventurer's adventure.
Yeah.
I have to search for it after after this podcast. I'm going to search
Yeah,
for
yeah,
it.
yeah. And because Messner went during the first time, Tillman went, and they went through the jungle route. So nowadays people don't allow through jungle. So you can take a helicopter directly to base camp, climb, and go back in helicopter. But we were so adamant, we wanted to experience the mountain the way it should be, and that became a lifelong adventure. There were not many misadventures and adventures there, but Yeah, I mean, we invited those adventures by ourselves by trying to explore the jungle and walking and getting into there.
By any chance, if you have those video footages with you, they will make a hell lot of thing on internet. I assume that is there.
It's on YouTube, one small clip which overall captures that expedition. So I'll share that with you.
Because this is very rare. So the way you are telling it, for someone from India to go there to go through places like these, and what I find is that the people from West who do this, they are very good at marketing this.
Yeah.
They will do very good marketing of it, even though we are conquering much higher mountains, we are going through more challenging terrains. It's just the marketing that we are lagging, else we are doing much better in every aspect of the journey. I
Yeah.
follow these adventures, sir. This is phenomenal what you're telling, and I feel really honored talking to you.
Right.
one one point, sir, that has been in my consciousness for some time is that, like, now climbing Everest has become a tourism, and there are even traffic jams over the top.
Yes.
How is it there, sir? How is it there?
So one thing is that neither you nor I own that mountain, right? So if we don't own that mountain, we will not also be telling that, oh, you should go and you should not go, right? Now, because of the financial security, like a lot of people are getting financially independent, and with the with more internet and more accurate weather conditions, weather forecasts and all, so people have money. Now they are approaching this Mount Everest. Now imagine Mount Everest, if 196 countries, everybody sends 5 people, right? So you have 1,000 people. Every country sends 5 people. Then it is 1,000 people. So there, in total, 500 people attempts every year, right? So it's like 2.5% from each country. Now in a year, is it unfair to ask a country to send 2.5? Though it's not like that kind of easy unitary method. But what I'm trying to say is that uh, if you see, for a country, probably 10, 15, 20 people will attempt. Now in a country like us, 20 people attempting Everest in a year is very less percentage, right? Now why the traffic jam happens? Now Everest summit happens only during one time to another, like one slice of time, right? Say 12 days or 15 days, right? Summit window, you get 10 days, suppose. 10 days, 500 people means 50 in a day, which is not a big number. But the problem happens when the weather conditions becomes bad, and out of 10 climbing days, you only get 3 climbing days, right? And then other climbing days are risky, because if the wind is more, if the snow is more, you have a risk of losing your fingers. Now, you tell me, would you not try to get to a day, you want to go to the summit on a day which is less risky, right? Now, just like you, all other people are also thinking that way. So that means instead of 50 people in a day, now suddenly you have 200 people in a day, because you have to do it in 3 days, right? Obviously, if 200 people comes there, and there are some places which you have to go one by one in a row, so, and you have the instance of those pictures of traffic jam only on those areas, you don't see in the whole area, only that blockages, the points which are you have to go one by one. So there obviously people will be stuck. So I don't think that either Nepal has to do something like restrict the total number of permits from, say, they can restrict to 200 people only, right? But then you have to also understand that Nepal's only source of income, the majority chunk of income comes from only tourism, right? So they wouldn't like to make that compromise. But then, what if tomorrow China makes a lift to Everest? I think we have to get scared of that kind of outcome, rather than more mountains. Mountaineers are trying to come to climb mountains, so that way.
I get your point, sir. The artificial intervention would be more dangerous.
Yes. And Nepal can always take a call of restricting the number of climbers in a year. But then they might have seen that 10 climbing days, even if 100 comes, still it is a good number. But nobody factors the climate change is a real thing, and it is not allowing on a good summit day for people. So
These are real hard facts from the ground. I mean, what we see in the newspapers or in the YouTube or somewhere else, it's very different from what we see. Have you
right.
have you been to that K2, sir? The on that
So
Pakistan side?
India can go because it is in Pak occupied Kashmir. So India won't allow you to get a visa for K2 because then India is giving a visa for something which is for India. Like if it is, if India claims that POK is a part of India, then why would Indians need a visa to go there? So there, in future, if there are amicable solutions between the two countries, maybe we'll get an opportunity to climb K2. Not only K2, there are 5 good mountains there: Gashabram 1, 2, Broad Peak, Nanga Parvat, and K2. So
It has the highest death rate. It seems. I was just reading somewhere.
yes,
Is it
it's very
true?
deadly mountain, a very dangerous mountain, very deadly mountain, and the Nepal climbers have been doing fantastic jobs, and they are breaking all the records there. And we are just an audience now, but we also aspire someday that we can plan to climb those mountains as well.
Sir, my last question would for you would be, is there anything that you're looking forward to in terms of adventure? I mean, not adventure in that sense that you're planning to do.
Yeah, so I have to balance both, like to become financially independent to carry on this kind of adventures, and I have a lot of adventures in mind. Like it's not restricted to just mountains. I want to uh, cross some oceans. I want to cross some deserts. So I want to sail. So there are a lot of dreams, which slowly, one by one, I'm going to follow them. uh, yeah, but with a little support from corporates or government, I think the journey could have been even more fulfilling because we could achieve even more for our country. So that way, but there are a lot of adventures, and there is no end to adventure.
I think one needs to be in some sort of adventure until he's alive. That's what makes us alive. I think
Yeah, yeah.
something to look forward to. Not in that sense physically, but something to look forward to. That is
Yes,
what
yes,
basically it is.
yes, yes, yes.
So, sir, what would you like to say to younger Arun or someone who is like 20, 22, 25? He's just starting off with life. What would be your message to him or her?
I think allow yourself to go and make mistakes, and you learn from them rather than regret those mistakes. Because the true learning comes from making mistakes, and not to, like uh, I learned more from my mistakes, from my failures, than from my successes. Right. So both are important, and I think no matter what, you should follow your dream, and maybe it will take little more time, but it's worth.
Thanks, sir. Thanks a lot, and thanks a lot for telling all those difficult stories and all those hurdles with that smile, sir. That is, I think, the best part for me that I will take away from this podcast. Even researching for this podcast, when I was going through other stories and your website and other podcasts that I have done, it really inspired me. So I always do that before the podcast.